4?
John, we're not even to the double digits and you've lost count. Anyway,
Yep.
we're here with a special.
I mean, Giga Rambles had 200 plus episodes, so
Hey,
it's a lot.
we got a special guest.
Yes.
John.
No, and Matt.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were the special guest.
I mean,
Or
I'm
is
always
John
here.
the special guest?
No, we're always here.
Oh.
Trapped.
John and I are always special, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about getting family into war games, which is a precarious thing for many of us. Those of us with spouses, sometimes it's difficult because they don't always understand. So what are some things that we can do to convince them and or get them even at all interested in trying a war game? Because it's always one step at a time, right?
Yes.
So for y'all, starting with John, what do you do when you're introducing a family member, be it, you know, a younger child or an older person or, you know, any age, basically? How do you get them into it?
Step 1, let the Wookiee win. Step 2,
Nice.
don't call your significant other a Wookiee. So
That's a really that's awesome. I like that a lot.
Solid answers. Two solid answers.
No. So generally, getting so I find getting significant others interested in it a lot easier than it would be like a brother or sister or anything like that. And that's because generally significant others will have, like, you know, they're like, oh, hey, this is something that they spend a lot of time on. I want to get involved in it. And with that, it's figuring out the way in which they want to get involved. Because once again, like, you know, me and Matt, more so probably Matt than me, are on the competitive side. Like, we like to go to tournaments, we like to do like play events and all that sort of stuff. But that might not be how your SO wants to do it.
That's definitely not the way that my wife likes to do it.
Yeah. And so like, if it's something to where, like, with Emily, who is my current girlfriend, she likes the background, the story, the art of all that. So like, getting her into painting was a great way to segue into the hobby itself. Now with my brother, I've gotten him interested, but he's never like taken the full dive. Well, now he's a family man with kids, and you know, he's got bills, different bills than I have bills. But with him, it was the miniatures that like really attracted him. We both grew up modeling, like, you know, cars and like planes and things like that. So him looking at the miniatures, being like, oh, hey, this looks fun to build, or like, this is something that like I could enjoy doing. It's kind of finding the right hook. But back to my first statement is, if you want them to get into the playing aspect of it, it goes back to being a good demo person, and then also understanding that you probably have years of experience on them. So really dialing down the experience and trying to go back to like how it was when you started, like taking the rules in bite-sized pieces, understanding that they're going to get things wrong, and don't make it a court case while playing them, like being like, you didn't get that right. Be like, and so like basically streamlining the rules, dropping some stuff, and then building up that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I would add that almost any game system has at its core, one of the core things at almost any system, at least when we're talking about miniatures. I mean, board games are also true, but it's a little bit different in that respect. But in miniature gaming, one of the core aspects is like cinematics. Like, something about it looks cool. Like, something about it creates a picture in your mind that is exciting.
Yeah.
And you need to focus on that when you're teaching people. Because again, I'm a little more competitive than John. John's done some competitive stuff in the past. You can get lost in the numbers. You can get lost in the weeds. You can get lost in the legality of stuff, which is a fine way to play. But when you're getting new people in, you have to sell them on, this is why it's cool.
Yeah.
And then we kind of take it for granted once you've played for a while. You know, you're like, yeah, of course it's cool. And you talk about those stories later. But you have to make sure that that's at the forefront when you're trying to pitch it to family members. And the same thing with, if I can piggyback off of your statements about Emily, my wife, Riley, I got her into playing many moons ago, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And it was finding the art and the lore and the models that she liked, and like getting that to them, you know, and let Riley do it at their pace, right? Like it didn't have anything to do with, Riley wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna paint up a bunch of stuff and play you at this, what was it, like 2,000 points was the average game, or 2,500 points. She was like, I'm gonna paint it up and I'm gonna play whatever I have painted, and you have to be okay with that. Like you have to, like John said, you have to dial it down and be willing to get those cinematic moments and get those experiences together until they're at your level, because you have years of experience on them.
Yeah.
And I can tell you certainly that I demoed Wild West Exodus to a guy here in Cincinnati last weekend. Oh my goodness. I gave him an extra 400 points over me because I totally am on your side. I'm like, you have to make sure they feel awesome. He kept rolling ones and twos, literally. And I was rolling tons of like criticals. There's nothing you can do about it sometimes. You just gotta be like, well, I tried to let you win.
And that's something to where we, or maybe not we, but more so on the me side of things, I've been trying to figure out ways of cooperatively demoing people. So I find that a lot of times, especially if you're going to significant others, going head to head isn't necessarily appealing to everyone. If they haven't been playing competitive games, there's usually a reason for that sort of thing. But building a cooperative style of demo where, like with War Machine and Hordes, we kind of did an event at a Dragon Con a little while ago where it was kind of everyone versus one of the Colossals. And so it was really kind of pared down, but it was a great way to have everyone kind of work together versus this one common thing. And then if you felt like backstabbing each other at the end, like you could definitely do it. And that's a great way to introduce someone to the rules, working together with it. And so then you have two people. And so regardless of how it ends up, you have worked together on this goal. And the feeling is not necessarily one person lost, or like, one person beat the other person. It is either, hey, we defeated this monster, or maybe we'll have to come back later and try it again, like provide a challenge.
Right.
So I've been looking, because how we develop the colossal rules, I'd like to kind of bring that over to games like 40K or Age of Sigmar. Marvel Crisis Protocol has an interesting thing coming out sometime next year called the Raids, which should be very similar to that. But finding ways to cooperatively demo with other people is a great way to put it in. And then also it is putting you in a mentorship role, because you are both guiding each other towards the same goal. So that's when you can really kind of like be like, okay, well, I can use a little bit more of my experience and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully the person I'm showing the game off to will join with. But all of that is getting after you got the person interested in the game. And I think a lot of that, step one would probably be, or the first thing that you want to get to is getting them into the lore, the background, showing them armies and things like that they would be interested in. Long time I was trying to get Emily into Age of Sigmar, and I was like, oh, Emily likes birds, I'll show her Zinch. That was not the answer for her. Her response is that they looked like KFC mutants. So she didn't enjoy the featherless bird. Like, even though it was like a bird aesthetic, it wasn't like, it was kind of gross and demonic. Where she came in later on and she was looking down the wall and like she really gravitated towards lizard men, and bless her heart. For liking lizardmen, but she's also a fan of dinosaurs, but also on that same thing, the aesthetic of lizardmen is that like kind of noble kind of warrior race that isn't as like high tech, so they're relying on their brute strength and might, and they're comprised of all animal people, so whether it's lizard or dinosaur or some cross in between. And so that was really appealing to her. And that was something that, I didn't recognize before showing her the game. But after seeing it, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Dinosaurs are cool. And the race itself is a good race with a lot of cool details and all that, but nothing on the gross side. It is all either like regal or feral. So, yeah.
I like it. So then what happens, like, if you have someone who's very much doesn't like violence, etc. But the mechanics of war games are very fun. Are there like any less violent war games? That's the one thing about it that I know that I've talked to people about.
Yeah.
And they've said, "Oh, I would love it if there was one that had the same mechanics, but it was less about guns and shooting and stuff."
I know we brought up Marvel Crisis Protocol, but once again, that is a great game towards, like, you're throwing cars and buildings and things like that, but it's superheroes, right? Like,
Right.
no one's hacking off an arm,
Right.
no one's dying.
Yeah, they actually, the rules, like, they have two states, and the first state is healthy, and then you get dazed, and then after you're dazed, you get knocked out. There's like not serious injuries, like
Yeah.
you're not dealing with people being killed or like anything like that. You do remove the model from the table, and there is, cinematic punching and throwing buildings and stuff, but it doesn't have the same, I guess, fluff in state where
Yeah.
you're like, the model is dead, I've shot this person or I've stabbed this person. It's just, oh, they're knocked out, they're unconscious, they can't help right now.
Correct. And also on that note, with games like Marvel Crisis Protocol, they do a really great job of making the game more objective based.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you're having a person who's just like, I don't really want to like be violent, right? Well, you can choose some characters that are definitely not known for violence and such, like going with like Spider-Man, Miles Morales,
Yeah.
Gwen Stacy, and they're all about tying up their opponents,
Yeah.
and then grabbing objectives. So like that's something to where it could lead into their play style where it's like, all right, well, I don't want to play beat 'em up. I just want to kind of like grab the objectives and keep away.
And sometimes in Marvel Crisis Protocol, that's the right way to play,
Yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
it's the right way to just slow your opponents down and grab the objectives and win.
Yeah.
But that's the first one that came to mind for me was Marvel Crisis Protocol. I also like Blood Bowl for kind of the same idea.
Oh yeah, Blood Bowl's great. Yeah,
because Blood Bowl kind of has that same. It's like a gritty football, like fantasy football thing.
Yeah.
But like, I don't get the impression when I'm playing Blood Bowl that people die.
Yeah.
I just get the impression that they go to the medical tent, right?
Well, yeah, and they do.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, in Blood Bowl, it's another same game. It's a great miniatures game, filled with, like fantastic sculpts.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
The rules are really solid. And like Matt was saying, like, so if you're playing like a campaign, you can theoretically get a character knocked out and injured for the season, but that's it, right? Like, it's easy to say no, like, there's no death or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there's not anybody ripping helmets off and beating other people with them, so it's safer than real football.
Correct. And if you like the fantasy line too, it's a great way to get into that setting without getting into a violence actual set. Other games to look at are like things like Aristia, which is kind of like that like virtual sport game.
Yeah.
Now kind of MOBA like.
Yeah, it's very MOBA like, but like there's people with like guns and daggers and things like that. But like at the same point, Riot Quest is really great.
I was gonna say there are guns, there are weapons there, which is why I was kind of shying away.
Yeah.
But it's MOBA like. You go to the cooler, you don't actually get killed, you just get knocked out of the arena, and then you come back later.
Yeah, I actually imagine a lot of the weapons in Riot Quest are like not like real weapons, like it's like beanbag guns, or like I mean, like it's one of those things where it's like, think of Green Arrow, right?
Right.
Like this guy is literally like firing arrows left and right, but he never actually kills anyone.
Sure.
Unless you're the CW series, and then someone needs to put him in jail. But
Batman, perhaps.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because there's been a lot or a resurgence in games that aren't necessarily focused on violence, like Rumble Slam, like a lot of the sports games that have come out recently are really great for that kind of thing. It gives you a great sense of the miniature stuff, but it doesn't necessarily encourage you to murder everything. So.
Right, and of course, I'm also talking in the context of like, we think of American football as non-violent, even though a lot of folks that aren't used to it see it as very violent. So it's kind of like that, where yes, there's technically violence because you're like tackling each other and stuff, but Crisis Protocol sounds like a perfect game that you can get like younger kids. They love Marvel. Get them into it. If they're 10, that's great. Get your cousin into it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that a lot.
And that's like one of those things where it's like, hook them on the world. And so if you already know that they're a Marvel fan, then it's like super easy. It's just like, oh, hey, can I show you this Iron Man miniature? And they're like, oh, that's so cool. But like, yeah, do you want to play as Iron Man? And they'd be like, oh my God. Like, little me, when I started playing miniatures, there wasn't even a HeroClix around.
Right. Yeah.
I was playing Mage Knight and such, and when Heraclix came out, I'd be like, wait, what? I can get like all of my favorite comic book heroes, and I lost it at that point. But it's really important to, I guess, like understand what your demographic is, like in terms of your family, understanding why you want to get them to play. Is it to have another opponent? Is it to do a bonding experience? And so be knowledgeable, or self-aware, because like especially when I was younger, like a lot of times I wanted to be like, I wanted to show off to my older brother. So like if I was trying to get him into something, I would not hold back, and I would like try to take him to town because I wanted to prove that even though I'm younger, that I am competent. But it's something to be aware of if that's your intent. Make sure everyone's aware of that before you go into it. Be like, hey, like I'm really good at this game. I think you could be good at this too. I would like you to be my rival or whatever, however you want to phrase it.
I like that. So then, like, there's also, if you have the models, sometimes that will lead to you playing the game.
Oh yeah.
So I remember I first went to Gigabytes in, 2014, 15? Yeah, it was like early 2015. And I was just perusing, and then David said, hey, you should pick up that game. It was Warzone Resurrection. He said, yeah, get that one. I said, oh yeah, this artwork looks cool. He's like, yeah, but the models are great. You should get them and build them and paint them and stuff. I was like, okay, what do I do? And from there, I got into the actual gaming aspect of it.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who's not necessarily instantly into the game after like learning about the world, maybe just exposure to the models and or the building or painting process will gradually get them into it. Because it's kind of like an investment thing.
Yeah.
You've invested time and effort into it. You might as well play now.
That's a really good point, because the amount of people we get coming in, especially like new folks to 40K, like the younger crowd that's coming in, like a lot of times they'll be like, oh, hey, my brother left me these models when they left for college or graduated or whatever. And they always look cool. Like, can someone teach me how to play? And we've had so many people come in and get into the game that way. One, the people who are starting that way, it's a way to connect to their siblings, especially those who go off to college and such. And then secondly, it's something cool that they've always kind of wanted to get into, but maybe they didn't feel like those models were theirs until they were explicitly left for them. So yeah, I think leaving someone the models is a great way, or getting someone some models, especially if they have that interest in the hobby side, is a great way of hooking them.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I wouldn't have, if you had got me models before I played, it wouldn't have mattered, because the hobbying aspect is not, I like getting them on the table, right? And some people are like that. I hope I'm not the only one. But that, for a lot of people that I've seen here, that is what happens. Like, people get models, either their significant others or their family get them models for like a holiday or a birthday or something, and then they come in and they're painting, and then we see them playing. We see them demo games, and then they're the regulars, and so that happens, and that's a good way to get people in too.
Yeah.
I like it. It's kind of sideways. It doesn't have to be right for the game element of it.
Yeah,
because video games are so easy, right? Yeah. You just see someone playing, and you're like, "Oh, that looks cool."
Yeah, exactly.
The one difficulty for people who don't have like a good local store, people are they're in suburbs or other parts. Sadly, if you're not in Atlanta, sometimes some parts are not as easy to find good local stores. We just happen to be lucky to have Gigabytes. Self-advertisement. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't have that, sometimes it's hard to find people to watch playing.
Yeah.
You have to look online, and you already have to be interested to look online.
Right.
So when you come to Gigabytes, you already have so many people you see playing already. So it's easy to just watch and like see, oh, this is cool. This is how they're going about it.
Yeah. So
bring your family to the store. Let them watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's really important, like as well. The mention with Emily was like, I wouldn't have necessarily recognized Lizardmen were going to be Seraphon, excuse me. Were going to be her favorite faction unless she came to the store with me and looked around for herself. We have so many people that come in that bring family members and things like that, and they usually find something that they really like that maybe their family wasn't expecting. Like whether it's a board game, a miniature game, Heck, like even a rule book. Like we have some people that buy rule books because they're like, oh, hey, the art's really cool. I know I did that when I was younger all the time.
Yeah.
Like I would have so many D&D books just at my house from different editions that I didn't know how to play, but I just really enjoyed the artwork in each one. So
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed.
Beast Claw Raiders for me, for sure.
yeah.
Big old mounts.
Yeah. Oh, those guys are really good looking. I've noticed a lot of people recently like getting like some Games Workshop models or some Privateer Press models for their like role playing campaigns. Like people play on maps and they get those, and that's kind of an in too. You know, they start wondering, well, I've got these models, what do they do? And I think I've talked to one person who kind of transitioned from a role playing game into I want to say it was Age of Sigmar. It was like the Beastmen. They were like, I got a bunch of these for a role playing game. Then
Yeah, like the Gores.
yeah, they got like I needed a bunch of goatmen. Now I have them. Now that I have them and they're painted, what do I do? Like other than use them in role playing games, what do I do? And so we kind of talked about.
You're like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You started down a dark and twisting path, my friend.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. So then, one tactic that I have to suggest, because we talked about gameplay and stuff earlier, having people do the actions that you tell them right away is way better than giving them a list to begin with.
Yeah.
Because people get overwhelmed really easy if you say, well, you can move, you can shoot, you can charge, right? Because those are things that you do in separate phases of 40K,
yeah, sure.
which I think is what makes it actually really good for demos.
Right. Because I think you're right, because you just kind of give them the list of how they're doing. Like this is the phase where you do X, and it's not the same thing as like when you play a different game. Like one of the issues with Riot Quest is that you activate a single model, and then that model has the list of 6 things they can do, and like you're saying, people get kind of paralyzed. So you kind of sometimes have to say, oh well, you should probably just do this right now and see what happens, and then people generally will do that, and they kind of get the flow of the game pretty easily. But it's not. You're right. It's built into like Warhammer.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed in the video games when they had like the necessary, you have to press W and S and A and D or whatever. You have to move forward and backwards in order to pass and unlock that part.
Right.
And then you can turn around. So turn your head around and look around.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but
Yeah.
for people who've never played it, it's great.
And
Exactly.
it's one of those things where like you build that you take steps and do all that. I know a lot of games and starter sets, like they'll have, especially like once again, Games Workshop is really great. Where like they'll have you work through like a line of missions where they start adding in more and more rules, like things like Feast of Bone or Loon Curse or whatever. Those box sets are really good with a gradual mission build up, which I really recommend for people getting into the game or getting new people into the game. Follow through those missions; they're a lot of fun, and they do like explain a narrative, and it's a great way to build that style up.
Yeah.
And for the love of all that is good and holy, have lists for people to look at to show them what a list looks like.
Yeah.
So if you're like, hey, you're interested in this, here's what my list of my army looks like.
Yeah.
So you know what it looks like overall. You know how many models you should be having, all that kind of stuff. Give them an idea of what they can expect, maybe look forward to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along those lines, I don't like to, this is a personal experience. I don't like to tell people, hey, you should get this and this and this and this. I want them to have their, choices, because usually everything in the range is pretty good. Like I don't want to go up and say, John, I heard you like Seraphon. You know what you should do? You should just buy skinks. Just only buy skinks.
Yeah, that's all you'll ever use.
That's all you'll ever use. Because A, you'll get bored painting them and assembling them. And then B, you don't get to experience any of the other cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, oh, well, you could use it in this way, or you could do this. And really, when they're brand new, when you're just getting in, you do need to have a list of like, hey, these are kind of the essentials that you need. And you can tell them the reasons if they want, like, you do need skinks for Seraphon, right? But I don't need to tell you only buy skinks.
Yeah. It like, especially, and this is where like knowledge base of whatever game you're doing, or asking one of the employees that has a great knowledge base comes really in handy.
Yeah.
Because like, someone from the outside be like, all I see is skinks.
Yeah.
But like someone who's experienced with it, could say like, oh, hey, there's a lot of different lists out there and you can play in a variety of ways. So like what units are appealing to you, and there's a list out there for it.
And I think you kind of have to work down like which one do you like, and then these are the things that go with that.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're not just giving them a whole like list of just pick what you want and throw it together, which you can do. But sometimes people get frustrated by that, right? They're like, people come in and they say, what do I need? And I'm like, well, I have to, actually figure out what do I tell people they need. And there's not a long list, but I have, there has to be a list there.
Yeah. And so, it's different for every person and all that, but like always making sure to whoever you're getting in, for them to know that what they want is good.
Yeah.
And there's like, and what to go along with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like someone comes up and be like, I really like Nagash. Like, I just want to play Nagash, and be like, okay, great. Like, this is kind of what Nagash likes. And like, and as long as you take like a couple of battle line units, you can really kind of like spice it up any which way you want. And you can get a feel and kind of tailor from there.
Yeah.
So it's
now this is something that I've done a couple of times, and I highly suggest it if you have someone who doesn't really get into the hobby aspect too much, because miniatures, there's tons of painting and all that involved. What you can do is basically have a painting party, but then you can either have on battle reports or talk about the game in general as you're painting. And that just literally like snowballs, a snowball effect, to where they can start painting with you. Maybe they're not too much into painting. And then eventually they learn more and more about the game. You can explain game mechanics while you're painting, so it's not all about them having to concentrate looking over a battlefield, because sometimes it can be overwhelming for people.
Yeah. No, that's a really good idea. Most of the paint parties I've been involved in have been talking about the game, but I like the idea of putting on like the battle reports. There's kind of a wealth of battle reports right now out on different media platforms, and like putting them that on while you're playing also gives you, or while you're painting rather, gives you a chance to like pause if they have a question about something, or like, it's just kind of, you're getting it by osmosis. They don't even really have to pay that much attention. They're hearing people talk about it. They're hearing people use the language that's associated with the game. And it kind of, starts to get into your vocabulary, and it's easier to kind of pick up those concepts later. I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like watching football, American football. For anyone that's watching that's
the good old
not America.
Oh, hand egg.
Yeah, you got to be able to explain, like, what is holding? What is this? What is this penalty?
Yeah.
There's a lot of penalties nowadays, but...
And
exactly.
On that note, we're going to get some holding in.
Oh, are we?
And open up the store. So we got to get going.
Oh, it is time. All right.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining us. I will be recording with Tabletop Minions next Friday. So... if you guys could keep waving for a second. If you have anything you want me to talk with Uncle Adam about regarding gigabytes, I'll make a separate video, but let us know. Put in the comments. Bye, everybody.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.